How many times have you imagined for your ultimate desires and witnessed reality shifting only for it to fall short? How many times have you visualized, affirmed, scripted, or assumed the state of the wish fulfilled and saw someone else receive your manifestation? Hi, my name is Joseph Alai. Welcome to my channel. And today I'm going to talk about the critical factor for success with manifesting and the difference between success and failure with this one key. And this key is thinking from the desired scene as opposed to thinking of the desired scene, the imaginal act. This is absolutely critical, and my earlier years of manifestation were riddled with failures or missed manifestations or mismanifestations, others receiving my ends, or things happening in such a way that the signs were everywhere, but I never got the thing that I wanted. And so I'm going to take you through a story of a client of mine towards the beginning of my coaching career with manifesting. And I want to explain to you his story and how he overcame a crazy problem with his specific person as it relates to this topic, and how swapping from third person point of view to first person point of view is the solution for him, and how it might be yours as well. Before we begin, please hit the like button. It does something to the algorithm so that those who wouldn't normally be able to see this will be able to see it. Hit the subscribe button if you like systematic manifesting, broken down strategic methods, analyzed and data-driven through years and years of testing. Hit the bell icon if you like to be notified. I release shorts almost every day, and my long form videos are released every Tuesday and every Friday at 10 p.m. London time, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Also, there is a workbook associated with this video. Download it and fill it out. They're not just nothing. They are strategically crafted to help you to implement the topic into your mind and utilize and manifest whatever you want. So let's jump into this topic of thinking from the scene and thinking of the scene. This was a topic that I became greatly familiar with when I began to read the lectures of Neville Goddard. Now, if you're not aware, Neville Goddard has a very accurate and meticulous way to manifest, which really goes well with my philosophy. You see, when I began to manifest, it was 2012, deliberately manifest. Well, I was communicating with a friend who was teaching me the ins and outs of prayer and told me that I should keep track of all of my prayers. And at the time, that was what I knew manifestation as. It was a prayer. And so with that, throughout the years, I was able to meticulously uncover the least common denominators between these experiences that I was witnessing. And then luckily for myself, a twist of fate would become that I was a manifestation coach, thereby being able to meticulously observe the manifestations of others as well. And these common denominators re-cemented themselves in an applicable way that we use today. However, it was not always this way. I had a lot of trouble in the beginning getting my manifestations to stick. It's no surprise with a ton of information out there that some of it is going to be better than others. And so with Mark is a prime example of this idea, this topic. So when Mark came to me, he was a 27-year-old and he had a person that he was desperately in love with. Now, this person was someone that he dated in the past, but they had broken up and were not together for a number of years. Now, the problem was he had not had any contact with her in quite a long time. Things did not end in the best way. When he came to me, he told me that he was doing what he had read. He was doing what he saw. He was doing what he heard. And he was imagining consistently. He was imagining continuously all his desired manifestations. The things that he wanted was imagining before bed. And he would bring them into sleep with him. The problem was, and he had showed me this through photos, was another man was experiencing his dreams. And he was gutted. This guy was desperately sad. I felt so bad for him. Now, there were a couple of things working in his favor. He was not the most knowledgeable at manifesting. In fact, who is? Really, it takes a breadth of experience, years of testing, and maybe you can get a slight grip on this stuff. Now, that was the beginning. I had to pick a little bit and get a little bit deeper on what he was doing. Now, he told me that he was imagining after the end of each of these desires, meaning to go to restaurants, to go on vacations. It was his experience of being with this person that he was in love with. The problem was that I had detected almost instantaneously was that he had never heard of the concept of first-person perspective or third-person perspective when it comes to imagining, when it comes to visualization. Now, he was a visualizer and he was very good at that. The problem was some of the literature he was reading, and one specific mention that he said was Joseph Murphy. There was a mental movie technique that he talked about, which is that he would visualize himself as if he was in a movie, and he would experience the going out to dinner, the going on vacation with this specific person. And I'm telling you, he was absolutely adamant the precise things that he was imagining were manifesting as another individual taking his woman out to do those things, going on vacations. The worst one was he wanted to get a convertible and drive in a car with her down this highway. He had this whole thing, this visualization in his mind. And then he sent me a picture from Instagram of the exact image, but the other person was driving in the driver's seat of the convertible. So he was beside himself, as I said. Now the solution here, and I told him this would be quite simple. It was two-part and twofold. Now, I want to delve back a little bit into what the problem was here, right? When I told him about first-person perspective and third-person perspective, it in the beginning was a little bit difficult to grasp. As for some people, it is. And not only that, it isn't the easiest to do, but we want to go back into why we use first-person perspective instead of third-person perspective. And I think a good example is in order. Now, think of, for a moment, the theory behind this, first of all, is the facet of our being that creates, the facet of our being that manifests is consciousness. Now, consciousness consists of our awareness of being, or in other words, our awareness is conscious of being aware. Now, what that means for us is we have a awareness of existence. The fact that you can right now be aware of what's going on, there are two components here. There is your awareness itself, and then the actual awareness of what's happening. So for example, if you look at the screen, you can see the screen of what you're looking at right now, but then you can also observe the fact that you're looking at that screen. So in other words, there's a piece of you that is aware of a thought. The fact that you can identify a thought means that there is a difference between your thought and your awareness of being. So pause the video for a second if you need to really wrap your head around that. But there's a core difference between the mind and awareness. There's a difference between imagination and awareness. There is a difference between your body and what you would consider to be your memories, your interests, your concept of self. Those are different from your consciousness of being. You can be aware of every one of those things, but your awareness itself never changes. Now, like I said, if you want to pause that for a second and really wrap your mind around that, because that is a critical function of reality that if you can wrap your mind around that, unlocks everything, unlimited potential in comparison to the opposite, which is to think that the mind and awareness are the same thing. And there's a humongous difference between those, and one of them will also prevent you from receiving a lot of manifestations, and it's very confusing. So, but with that said, with this concept of your awareness of being is the creative power. The analogy that I was going to give, the example I was going to give is like a photograph. So essentially what it is whatever you're aware of experiencing. Meaning, if you look at this camera, I'm looking at the camera. If you're looking at the screen and you're staring at that screen, there's a perception, right? If you put your hands up like this, now say for a moment, you took a snapshot from your eyeballs of exactly what you were seeing, and then that developed. So your consciousness or your awareness of being, what it does is it replicates just like a photograph. The manifestation is a replication of what you are aware of. So in other words, your awareness of being is the creative power. That which you saturate your mind with, if you do it properly, your consciousness, whatever you are conscious of, will be replicated outward into the screen of space in the exact same perspective. Which means, and I've seen this play out hundreds of times, depending on how meticulous I am with imagining, and way more times from my clients or friends or subscribers, which essentially is you, to the same degree that you can meticulously or saturate your mind with something thoroughly, to that exact same degree, tense, point of view, experience, feeling, emotion, sense, that will manifest on the screen of space. So take, for example, now that Mark was imagining his specific person in a convertible and he was in the driver's seat. However, in his imagination, he was not witnessing it through his own eyes. He was witnessing it as if he was a camera, observing from atop into the convertible, witnessing someone who looked to be himself and his specific person in the passenger seat and driving down the highway. So essentially, literally, that was what he was saturating his mind with. Now, remember the photo, the awareness of being. He was very good at imagining. So his awareness of being would snapshot the exact image that he was saturating his mind with. And then he would manifest it on the screen of space, which means the exact tense point of view manifested outward. So he sent me a photo. The photo that he sent me, the screenshot from Instagram, was someone holding their phone up from behind Mark and behind his specific person from the exact point of view and tense as he was visualizing it as if he was a camera from above. So imagine then there's a camera from up above taking a photo downward on Mark and the specific person. Now imagine fixating and holding that within the mind of consciousness. So your mind essentially fixes on your mind, holds it there, and your awareness is shining a light upon it, and it burns its mark. That becomes impressed, and that manifests, which is the exact reason why Mark manifested someone else experiencing his end. This is exactly what will happen if you're a good imaginer and you're imagining in third-person perspective. You will manifest this like clockwork. Now, there are certain exceptions and variations to this depending upon what function of the mind you fixate on when you're imagining. But if you're doing it properly and focusing on visuals, then third-person perspective will manifest witnessing results. So the solution, therefore, I told Mark, was to imagine in first-person perspective, and I gave him that objective. I explained to him the exact thing that I explained to you, and then I saw him again in a couple of weeks. Now, the other thing that was extremely important to mention to him was that the things that he was imagining was not the end. Although he was imagining events depicted after the experience that he wanted, he was confusing that with imagining the end. Now, there are differences between imagining the middle and imagining the end. Your seeds, those things which get created upon imagining and impressing, are not connected. They know only of themselves. So they will not connect necessarily. They can and usually run independent. However, with that said, if you swap your imaginal acts to the end and imagine only the end, meaning after the perception or the point of view of the person receiving the thing they ultimately want, which is being in a committed marriage with this individual, in his case, that would solve everything. So ultimately, what happened after discussing this with him, and we met again, things changed radically. Mark had some amazing news for me. Now, it wasn't a few weeks until I saw him again, but before he even took the call, I received an email from him that I got to check right before, and it was a photo of him and his specific person. Now, interestingly enough, I mean, I thought, and I wasn't sure if he was there was no caption to it and no text. But what happened was when he answered the video call, or when he joined the video call, is he told me the morning after he had imagined, he got the first text message from his specific person that he had received in a long, long time. I don't remember the exact time frame, but I know it was a very long time. And initially I thought that was the end of the news, although I know he had sent me that photo. But what he had told me was something like, it was extremely shocking. Essentially what happened is she said that those photos, a lot of them that she had posted, were actually far long ago, and they had just been uploaded recently. And not only that, so she was not currently and actively with the person as if it appeared that she was, although it was recent enough, but that gave him enough confidence to continue imagining. And then what happened was very shortly thereafter, they ended up hanging out, and she told Mark that she was really close with that man and had some feelings for him, but he was not the person that she thought that he was, and she had no more. And because they were not committed fully, it was not that big of a thing, and she ended up going back with Mark. And in fact, she said that she had been thinking about him quite a lot, but the man was possessive and jealous. This is why she had completely shut him out in his communication. Interestingly enough, all he had to do was imagine the first person perspective. But then I asked, what was the photo about? And he said, do you remember back? And he cited back to our initial, our first session together, and he told me one of the things that he had been visualizing, and he was visualizing him in a photo booth with the girl, his specific person. He had imagined it over and over and over, but nothing was happening. And so after swapping to first person perspective, that was the exact thing, one of the things that he had imagined, and they manifested exactly the way that he wanted. And all it was switching from third person to first person. So that is one of the core differences between thinking of the scene and thinking from the scene. Now, I haven't followed up with Mark, but I know in a long time, but I know the last time I talked to him, he was still in a stable, consistent relationship. He had imagined marriage with her. Now, this was years ago that I had originally coached him, years ago that we had engaged in this activity that he would begin to visualize in first person perspective. And I know things had gone continuously right. So I'd be very interested if Mark saw this video to reach out to me. That would be amazing to get the feedback and follow up on the story. But besides that, just remember, the key here is to place yourself in the experience of the wish fulfilled. That means, what would you be experiencing? What would you be feeling? What would you be seeing? Not what would you be witnessing from a perspective. There's a key difference, a core difference, a fundamental difference between the expectation of experiencing something versus witnessing something third hand. And there's a difference of sensation, a difference of emotion, a difference of everything. So I hope that was helpful. If it was, please do like it, hit the subscribe button, download the workbook, hit the bell icon, and I'll see you soon. Thank you so much.